Welcome to Tea and Stories. I don't have my tea today. I left it in the kitchen. Oh well. I wanted to read something to all of you today, so I'll wait till folks come in. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. Yep. It's June 19th. I want to read something to you, actually. Something that explain, first of all, my association with Juneteenth. I have been celebrating Juneteenth for this is my 11th year. I've always known about Juneteenth, though. Being a reader and being super curious about history, particularly oral history. I learned about Juneteenth actually when I lived in North Carolina when I was a teenager, but I also learned that Juneteenth was frowned upon there, even though that was never said. It was just the way people acted. The reason why Juneteenth was always such a black eye in the history of United States in particular, it was a black eye because basically for almost 3 years, people of African descent were free and they were not set free. There's a lot of reasons why people said that they didn't tell folks that they were free. They said that it was, in the article that I was reading earlier, it was talking about the fact that, there was a lot of stories going around why it took 3 years to let everyone know. One, the Confederacy still had kind of a chokehold. And they still had their feet in the lower states. A lot of people who were enslaved didn't know how to read. So even if they had posted things, they wouldn't have known. But those who could read, they didn't want them to find out because they wanted to get 1 or 2 more planting seasons out of the people that were there. Which is about right. I mean, our world, you can see that even in time of pandemic, people are still trying to squeeze out $1 instead of focusing in on taking good care of people's health. They're too busy wanting to open things back up, even though the best thing was for everyone to stay home. It reminds me a lot of Juneteenth and how they didn't want people who were enslaved, who did the majority of the field work and the brunt work and the hard labor, to find out that they could just walk away or that they could charge for their labor. They didn't want there to be anything like that. They still wanted to get the free labor. So they let them still think that they were in bondage. And I think about all the people who must have died and been hurt up for 2.5 years when they were actually free people. It says something about this United States and whose back everything was built on. But let me read a little of this to you. Dating back to 1865, it was on June 19th, the Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger landed at Galveston, Texas with the news that the war had ended and that enslaved people were now free. Note that this was 2.5 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which had become official on January 1st, 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on the Texans due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, with the surrender of General Lee in April of 1865 and the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. Later attempts to explain this 2.5 year delay in the receipt of the important news had yielded several versions. And I was telling you about that. They said one of the ones is that they said it's often told is that the messenger was murdered on his way to Texas with the news of freedom. Another is that the news was deliberately withheld by the enslavers to maintain the labor force on the plantations, and still another is that federal troops actually waited for the slave owners to reap the benefits of one last cotton harvest before going to Texas to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. All of which or none of these versions could be true. Certainly for some, President Lincoln's authority over the rebellious states was in question. Whatever the reasons, the conditions in Texas remained status quo, well beyond what it was statutory. On this day is when we celebrate General Order Number 3, which read, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection therefore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired laborer." There was a financial investment, and that was the reason why people were kept enslaved. People paid to own other people, and they felt like that they were investment. They were investment just like their animals were investment. They were investment just like their crops were investment, and that they had rights over them. Those rights were rights that were so heinous. I mean, rights over everything. Just imagine. I used to say this to my children when I would go in and do storytelling in classes around slavery. I went to a very prominent school here in Philadelphia, and I was sitting with middle school students. Now, middle school students are notoriously heinous. I love them, but they just say the meanest things. I'm just amazed by them. And they were, there was a group of boys that were sitting down in front of me, and they were making these little jokes. Very racist jokes, by the way. The majority of these children were from affluent families. Many of them were of European descent. And I said, okay, let's do a little experiment. I want you guys to close your eyes. I had them all close their eyes, and I said, I want you to think with your mind's eye this happening. You and your family are sitting there eating dinner. Your mom's sitting at one end of the table, your dad's at the other, and your little brothers and sisters. You've all been out doing a lot of hard work, and you're sitting down to a meal. All of a sudden, the man who is the overseer of the plantation, basically he was the man who ran things for the owner. They break into your house. They just walk through the front door unannounced, and they grab your mother. Now, your father is sitting there, but a gun is held to his head, and he's told if he makes a sound that he'll be killed. And they drag your mother away and do terrible things to her. You can hear her screaming in the other room, but your father can't come and help her. And then she's just dumped back in there, and maybe the men laugh to each other and just walk out. Those acts of terrorism were the things that happened to our people when they were enslaved. Now understand, our people were not slaves, but they were enslaved. They were taken. The children went from passing little jokes back and forth to total silence. Now, I remember one of the teachers who was sitting up front, she was laughing kind of nervously when I told them that story. another teacher, he started clapping. All the children were very upset. And then I brought them back down. I said, but you won't have to worry about that. You never have to worry about that. You are safe. But don't you think that everybody deserves to feel safe like that? To feel as though their family will be taken care of? I talked to a lot of those young people afterwards, and that did leave a big impression. Needless to say, they did not want me to come back the next year. I didn't whitewash it. I didn't tell them the version that they expected me to tell these beautiful children. I wanted them to know the truth. I worked in a high school once, and one of the young people that I worked with wrote, "The reason why we hate our parents. We don't hate them, but we hate the things they do. And one of the things that they do is lie to us. And then when we find out the truth, we feel ashamed and we feel sad and we don't know how to move beyond it." It's really important that we tell our children the truth, and the whole truth. Even when it's terrible, even when it's awful. Sometimes we don't tell them the truth because we don't know what the truth is. So I say to everyone who's listening to this story, everyone who hears me, to have that conversation. We don't just have to have it in white households. We have to have it in black households too. We have to talk to them about inequality, but we also have to talk to them about reconciliation and about our rights, because our rights are important. That's Mama's small history lesson for the day. Now I'm going to tell you a Juneteenth story. It's called Looking Back. The story takes place 3 years after Juneteenth. It's on Juneteenth. I'm getting everything ready for the house, because we going to have a bonfire today. Today is Juneteenth. Now, I know Juneteenth may not mean nothing to my neighbors around here. They ain't never lived through enslavement like I did, or like my man John did. And our children, they ain't never had to feel the lash, but they still have repercussions. See, we still got to look after our children and keep them safe. We still having a hard time trusting. John, he's a big old man. And that day on Juneteenth, I remember we was down in Galveston, Texas. We was on a big old plantation. John, he lived 3 slave quarters down from me. Me, I lived with Aunt Belly Sue. They called her Belly because she's a little chubby. I loved her. She was my elder, and she took care of me. See, all my people had been sold away. But me, I was a good picker, and so I was kept. Now, we should have known that something was happening, because about 3 months before, the owner of the plantation, one Captain Roberts, he took his family, his wife, his 2 daughters, and his son, and some of the household slaves, and he took them to the Caribbean. Now, he ain't never gone that time of the year. He had taken his family away before, but never like this. It was like they was packing up everything. But we knew better than to ask any questions. No, they look badly on that. You could get the lash for it. So we didn't say nothing. Not to him anyway, or where the overseer could hear us. because he would take it back. He left with his family and left that house almost vacant. He took Cook with him too. He ain't never done that before. Now, Lacey was the seamstress. She was being taken there too. And she came back up to that house right before they left. And she called all us young'uns together. And she told us that there was some clothes. Clothes that were discarded. That the mistress was throwing away. But she had taken them and bundled them up and hid them. And she said something getting ready to happen. And when it does, I want you to go get them clothes. They for y'all. You're going to need them. Why, Lacey? I can't say. But trust me. Then she was gone. Me and my friends, we ain't never forgot. And then there were whispers going through. June 19th, 1865. We woke up, the sun was already up. Got right scared. But Aunt Belly, she told me, don't worry, child. You ain't never got to worry again. I didn't understand. She said, just get up and get dressed. And I did. And we went out to the courtyard. And I ain't seen the overseer, old Pete. He was gone. The man that was standing there, he looked like a legal type. And then we saw soldiers. We didn't know what to think. Got a little scared, actually. But this big old man, he got down and he read from the scroll. And it said that we was free. It said that now we was hired people. And that old Captain Roberts, he was our employer. Mr. Don, he said, that means he owe us money. And we all started laughing. We didn't know quite what to do at first. First, it was hard to believe. But we had to believe it. The soldiers told us. Oh, people was hooping and hollering. And Aunt Belly told us to go and put on our best clothes. And we remembered what Lacey said, and we ran and got them clothes. They were clothes for men and women, and they was fancy like. And they had been mended. She had mended them for us. Bless her heart. I still wonder where Lacey is. Wonder if she got free too. Or did they lie to her too? Well, anyway, we got all dressed in our best. We put on hats and we celebrated. But first, Bob David, he prayed over all of us. Because he said, this ain't going to be easy. And don't think it's going to be no walk in the park. Because it's going to be hard for folk to give up their power over others. Some people just evil. And some people, it's their way of life. And they don't know no different. But we prayed. Yes, we did. Then we celebrated into the night. Oh, I remember that bonfire. That was the first time in a long time that we had had plenty to eat. A lot of the foodstuffs had been already sold, but there was still enough for all of us. And people started taking things out of the house, saying that this is just what he owes us. And they started packing wagons. And some of us younger people, we left. We left to go find our real freedom. Now the elders, many of them just stayed there. It seems that Captain Roberts, he decided that some of us could stay on and that he'd pay us a wage. It wouldn't be much, but we had to work hard. That's what he said to us. And some of the older folk, they just stayed because they said that'd been their life, all their life. That was home to them. But we younger people, we wanted to go and see what the world was like beyond that plantation. And so we all headed out. Now me and John, we got married. We jumped the broom right before, and we headed off up here. We living up here in Oklahoma. It ain't been easy, but we done good. Now, we started working with as tenant farmers and to this Quaker couple, and they've been good to us. But my John, he still be suspicious. He said you still can't trust no white folk. You don't know what they gonna do. And we done had 2 children, 2 beautiful children. I love my son and my daughter. Obadiah is my son. He's strong and handsome just like his daddy. And my baby Rose, she is going to be a teacher one day. They getting to learn how to read. See, I learned on the plantation, but I had to do it all quiet like. But they can learn to read out loud, and they don't ever have to be scared. Not like I was. And I don't beat my children. I don't have to. I can talk to them, and they's intelligent. See, I want a different life for my children than I had. I don't want them to live in terror. That was 4 years ago. 4 whole years. And now we can breathe. I'm not going to say it ain't still scary. And I ain't going to say that we've been treated kindly all the time. But I will say that we know if we don't like where we are, we can leave. And that's more than ever was before. This freedom of ours, it's kind of shaky, but it's ours. I hope you enjoyed that story. They say that freedom is in the mind first. If you are enslaved in your mind, then your body can be free to do whatever it wants to, but it'll never be free. And that's true. The biggest enslaver of all is hatred. Not just hatred for others, but hatred for ourselves. My challenge to my community is to love ourselves, to love our children, to stop looking at the differences between us and see what we have alike. To stop looking at the color of our skin and talk about light skin's better than dark skin and straight hair is better than nappy, because that is an enslavement of the mind. We are all beautiful people. If we are to look at what science says, all people came from a pretty dark-skinned woman in Africa. And if that be so, we are all black. And we are all beautiful. And depending on where we live, that's depending on the color of our skin. We should be happy to be people of color. We should love ourselves and love each other very hard. Just like we can hate hard, we need to love hard too. And if you love yourself, you can't be angry at nobody else. You can't find hatred. But love has to come from inside first. You have to love you first. You can't be worried about what other people think and what other people are concerned. It used to kill me when I'd hear my children as teenagers talk about, I hate black people. They get on my nerves. They always tearing up stuff and they always... Stop. Stop that kind of thinking. The truth is that people use the prejudices and the angry words and the past to keep us hating ourselves and hating our culture, because we have a deep, beautiful, rich culture, not just in Africa, but here in America. We help to build America too. We are America. Many inventions and many of the most beautiful things here in America started with people of African descent. Once we realize that, once we can look at black and brown people and say, you know what? We are beautiful, and teach our children that, then we can have a better world. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. And I hope that you not only will rest in peace when the time comes, but you live in peace now. Going back to my paparazzi. Paparazzi. Pretty, right? I love this ring. This is another one of my favorite rings. Also, I'm going to have a paparazzi sale this weekend. Ta-da! It's going to be on Saturday night at 8 o'clock, and I will send out the invite. All you have to do is come on, you see something you like, you write down the number or take a screenshot and inbox me. Everything is $5 plus $2 shipping. And you can enjoy some of this beauty. Happy Father's Day to all my daddies out there. Mwah. And have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Good night.